What's up guys, it's Z here, welcome back to Yugioh Deck of the Day. Today we have an update on the Fabled deck profile, a deck that got new support in Blazing Vortex, and I think this deck needed something because with all these random hits that we've been getting recently with stuff like the Dangers, with the Strudo getting banned for stuff like Needle Fiber, the deck lost a lot because it's not a deck that can actually play on its own, so it's been getting hit as collateral damage throughout these past few years because of other broken stuff. So if anyone wanted to play the deck, they didn't really have the opportunity to, but now that we have new support, I think the deck can rise to new heights because we have especially one new card that fixes a lot of problems for the deck. So I'm going to show you the list I've come up with. Do not expect that this is a pure deck. I've tried out played pure, but I think it's just way too random for me. Sometimes the hands are just so bad when you're playing pure that you can't really do anything. So I wanted to make sure that I at least guarantee a playing chance in every single game. So this is why I'm playing Endanger Fabled version. The deck very similar to what I've been used to playing because I've actually tried this deck way before it got new support, and I actually had some really good success with it. So I think I have an idea of how you should be playing the deck. So yeah, before we get to the deck profile, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So to start off with the Fabled monsters, play 3 copies of Fabled Grimro. You need to max out on this right now because you need to add something specific in order to be able to play, because yes, you can draw a lot of cards with your Dangers, but there are certain cards that you need to have access to ASAP in order to be able to do your plays as consistently as possible, and Grimro is the one that if you control a Fabled monster, you can discard her to add a Fabled from your deck to your hand. So she gives you access to everyone you need, and sometimes you need a specific level, sometimes you need a tuner or a non-tuner, so she will give you exactly what you need. 3 copies of Fabled Cruise. When Cruise is discarded, you special summon a level 4 lower favorite monster from your grave except this card, so this one gives you another access from the graveyard, and depending on what you need, you can get one from the grave. Like I said before, she's very flexible, just like Grimro. You can get a tuner, you can get a non-tuner, you're gonna get a certain level, which is something that the other Fableds don't do because they just special summon themselves from the hand, so you get stuck with whatever you draw. 3 copies of Fabled Ganasia. It's a level 3, which is important for sometimes because the tuners are all level 2. You do not really need to play anything else unless you want to play tuners that are not part of the archetype, which I don't really recommend, especially now that stuff like Jet Synchro and Glow Bulb are banned, so you don't really have anything too good in order to do plays with. If you want to play Plague Spirit or Zombie, I think you don't really have to because it's a level 2, just like the tuners you play in the deck, so it doesn't offer anything that the deck doesn't already have. So Ganasia, being a level 3, gives you access to level 5 Synchro monsters, and as you know, the deck already has a really good level 5 Synchro, and there's a really good generic level 5 Synchro in the game that you can get especially good use in playing a Synchro deck. 3 copies of Fabled Larry. Larry I usually use for Linkuribo because it gives me access to Nightmare plays and more stuff, because I can draw cards with Nightmare Phoenix, and this deck actually gives you access to the monsters even if you discard them for cost with Nightmares, which is something that Dark Worlds don't do, which is what gives this deck an edge sometimes over Dark Worlds when you're playing with Dangers, because you can play maybe cards like Twin Twisters and you will still get effects, or you discard your Fablets with Nightmares and they will still come to the field. So this is why Fablets are actually really fun deck, because no matter how you discard them, whether it being a cost or a danger effect, you're actually going to get them on the field. And Larry being a level 1, you can use it for Linkuribo, and I also play a Synchro monster in the deck that gives me access to being able to use this Larry for Synchro material, because otherwise I would not be able to with tuners just being level 2. For the tuners, play 3 copies of Fabled Cerberus. It's another monster that when discarded, you special summon into the field, level 2 tuner, really good. And the new card that I'm playing, I'm only playing one of the new cards, which I think a lot of people are going to find strange as there were a lot of support Blazing Vortex, but I think if you want to play a pure deck, then you can play, yes, more of those cards that came out, but if you're planning to play a version similar to this, then this is the only card you need to play, and it's 3 copies of Fabled Albank. This card fixes so many problems, so for any of you that actually know what Fablets do, so it's very similar to Kushano. Kushano was the card that when it was in the graveyard, you would discard a Fablet and then you would add it from your grave. So this does the same thing, but instead of adding it back, you special summon from the grave. It does banish itself when it leaves the field, yes, so you can only use it once, unlike Kushano, which you can use it as many times as you want, but Kushano didn't give you a monster on the field immediately. Now back in the day that was not a problem, because you didn't really need to spam the field turn 1, so you could actually afford a card to get back to your hand just for follow-up. Now in this day and age, if you don't spam your entire hand turn 1, whether it being first or second, you're most likely not going to be able to win when playing a deck like this, especially if you're playing competitively. So this card, being a level 2 tuner that can special summon itself by discarding any Fable from your hand, is actually really good for 2 reasons. First, you don't rely on Danger sometimes when this is in the grave, because you are not going to draw a bunch of Dangers every single game. There are only so many of them. So even if you draw just one Danger, sometimes this card will be enough to get you through the game because you can actually discard another monster. And also, when you draw a bunch of Fablets, these are usually the brick hands, but when you use something to discard one of them, then having Abak in the graveyard means that you can get another one to the grave. And then if you summon Raging, you can draw more cards. So this is why being a level 2 tuner is actually really important, especially in combination with Ganasia. And And this is why Grimmer is really good, because you can search whichever one you're missing. If you're missing a level, if you're planning to go for Raging, then you need a level 3 and a level 2. If you're planning on going into a Link monsters, then maybe you need a Luri, and it depends. So this is why Grimro is really good, and this is why this card is really good. I play only one normal summonable monster in the deck that I think you should be aiming to normal summon every single game, and that's Phantom Sky Blaster. Yes, you can summon any of the Fabled monsters, but you don't really have to normal summon them. They will just get themselves on the field when you discard them. The only monster you need to aim to normal summon is this card, because Phantom Sky Blaster, it's at 1, but if you're playing a deck with so many dangers, they have so many chances of actually drawing it, because you're going to draw almost half your deck turn 1, especially with the build I'm playing. So if you play Sky Blaster, it's a card that can give you so much advantage. It's a monster that can get you to Appaloosa very easily. It's a card that can get you to Borosor very easily. And being a level 4 actually helps because of some other stuff I play in the extra deck, being in combination with the level 2 tuners, so you can get to draw more cards from your deck. So yep, I think Sky Blaster is a really good card. One copy of Zephyrus. So if you're playing a heavy danger package in pretty much any deck, I think you should be playing Zephyrus, because it recycles a danger, it gives you a monster on the field, and you actually get to use danger you just recycled back from to the hand, because the danger hand effects are not once per turn. So especially in a hand that you lack danger monsters, this card is actually really, really good. One copy of Chaos Dragon Levianeer. This is another card you are actually digging for when you're playing. You don't really want to see it too early, but since all the Fabled monsters are light monsters, and all the Jackalope, Nessie, Tsunoko, all the dangers, you're going to get them to the grave, they're dark monsters. So you can make use of Levianeer's all 3 effects, depending on the situation. If you're playing Dark Worlds, you're not really going to get any light monsters to the grave, so I don't think you should be playing something like Levianeer. But in this particular version, when you can get access to all 3 effects, Levianeer is a really good card. The only reason I'm playing only 1 copy is because you don't want to see it early. If you see it early, there are high chances that you're going to discard with a danger, or that if you don't have a really good hand, then you will not be able to summon it at all. For the danger monsters, play 1 Nessie, 1 Jackalope, and 1 Tsunoko. The Trinity, these 3 are really, really good. Even if you're not playing a heavy package, if you're playing Fableds, I think you should be maining at least these 3 monsters, because they are so good on their own. Even if they're discarded for anything or their own effect, you will get really good effects. So if you don't want to play dangers, then at least play these 3. Trust me, you're going to see a lot more success just playing dangers. 3 Bigfoot and 3 Thunderbird. The level 8s give you more options going second, because they actually have attack points. The level 4s, yes, they do give more utility, but these cards not only pop cards on your opponent's field, but they also have such high attack power, which is why this deck can OTK very, very easily, especially if your opponent doesn't play a deck like Drytron, which is going to bring out Negates, or Vanity's Ruler, which is going to stop you completely. If you're playing something against like Eldritch, then you can actually OTK very, very easily, unless they have the God Hand, but if they don't, then you can easily play around something like Conquistador. 3 copies of Mothman and 3 copies of Chupacabra. The level 4s give you more options going first, and they give you more utility in general, because they give you more monsters in the field, or they give you a draw and discard. Sometimes you have to be reluctant on whether you use Mothman's effect, especially if you know what your opponent's playing, because if they're playing Eldritch, you hardly ever want to use Mothman's effect, but if they're playing something else that doesn't really benefit from that, then you can of course go ahead and activate it. And Chupacabra gives you another monster on the field, and the level 4s give you access to better Xyz monsters, because rank 8s right now are not really the best, but rank 4s can actually win you the entire game, especially one monster that is really, really good in this format. 3 copies of Brow. Even if you're not playing Dark Worlds, if you're playing a heavy danger package, I think you should be playing Brow, because it's just a monster that gives you extra draws, and it's free. It's the freest discard ever that gives you access to your deck, so you can actually see stuff like Sky Blaster and Levianeer. And the only spell I'm playing in the deck is one copy of Second Light. Second Light, unfortunately, is at 1, and I don't think Konami plans on bringing this card back. But in a deck like this, that you need to play so many monsters in order to function, it's still really okay to play Second Light, even if it's just the 1. You are going to see it a lot of the time, because you're playing so many dangers, so it's not like being at 1 makes it inconsistent. And I don't think there's something else that you'd rather play than Second Light. I've seen builds that play Pot of Avarice or Desynchro. I think Desynchro especially is really hit or miss, because if your hand is bad, then it makes your bad hands worse, and it can actually try to make your good hands better with Desynchro, but if you can get to the point where you can use Desynchro, then that means you've already summoned a Raijin, so you don't really need to play anything else. So this is why I think stuff like that makes the deck a little bit more luck-based, I would say, even though I am playing dangers. Yes, I'm saying this, the dangers actually decrease the luck base of the deck and make it more consistent, so this is why Second Light is my Spell and Trap of choice. For the extra deck, I play 1 copy of Martial Metal Altar. Luri is the one that makes this card being viable, because it's a level 1, and copying and being able to synchro summon it with the level 2 monsters, you get like level 3 synchro, and this gives you more monsters on the field. And not only that, but it gives you access to Crystal Wing when you go for the level 5 synchro monsters afterwards, because that's what you plan to do most of the time. And the Crystal Wing is much better than Savage in this deck, unfortunately, because it's not really very easy to get Link monsters in the grave. The only monster you're aiming to summon almost every single time is Needle Fiber, but in order to get to the grave, you have to go into an Appaloosa because a link cross doesn't exist anymore. So you need to be able to link it away, and it's not going to happen a lot of the time. You need a really good hand in order to do that. And also Metal Marcher is another monster you can summon with Needle Fiber, so you can get more monsters during your opponent's turn if you were not able to summon it during your own turn. One copy of Fabled Raging. Raging is the one that gives you 2 draws when you have no cards in hand. So it gives you 1 draw if you have 1 card, but usually you want to empty your hand before you summon this. 1 copy of Librarian. Sometimes you don't really have means to completely empty your hand before you go into a level 5, and this is why Librarian is so good, because not only will you get more draws, but with stuff like Metal Marcher, after you get those draws, you can use Raging or Librarian to go into Crystal Wing, so you can get more interruption on the field. 1 copy of Stardust Charge Warrior. You can summon this with Sky Blaster or Sky Blaster tokens, and then you can get more draws, and then you can use another level 2 tuner to go into Crystal Wing. Speaking of Crystal Wing, here he is. I think Crystal Wing and stuff, this is the most consistent way to play this deck, especially going first, because you want to try to make as many interruptions as possible. You don't have the best interruptions in the game. It's not like stuff like Vanity's Ruler or Ultimateness, nothing like that. But being able to summon small interruptions and amass them on the field all together, you can actually win a lot of games because your opponent, especially against a deck like this, might not know how to play against them. 1 copy of Crocodragon. Crocodragon is a good card, especially in this deck, because sometimes you may have Nessie on the field for level 2, which is why I think Trishula is really bad in this deck, because you don't really need to summon it in order to do stuff, and it's only good going second, while Crocosaurus gives you more draws. As you see the pattern in this deck, that even in monsters in the extra deck, I try to get as many draws as possible to try to be able to do my plays, because you need a lot of cards in order to work. It's not like this deck has 1 or 2 card combos. You need a lot of cards in your hand in order to do something, so this is why stuff like this works. Being able to give you more draws and also be a disruption is a really good pattern for this deck. For the Xyz monsters, the rank 3 I play is Cicada King. Cicada King is an disruption, and I think it's the best rank 3 to make when you're trying to go first, which is why this deck can actually do it, because with stuff like Ganassia and Jackalope and Tsutsunoko, you can get a rank 3 very easily. For the rank 4s, I play Dweller and Tornado Dragon. Especially Dweller is really good this format, which is why I said the level 4 dangers are much better going first, because you can get Dweller on the field, and Dweller sometimes on his own can win you the game if you have a good enough follow-up to be able to OTK, because your opponent is not going to be able to OTK, or at least they will not be able to play the best possible hand if you have Dweller on the field. And Tornado Dragon, some matchups it's better than Dweller, which is why it's here. The only rank 8 is 38. Usually 38 is here not to negate spells, but to redirect attacks away from Dweller, because if you can stick a Dweller on the field for more than 1 turn, that's so devastating for your opponent, and the only way that a Dweller can be destroyed is just by running it over, because it's so weak. But if you have 38 on the field, then you can protect it. Can also protect Appaloosa to be able to use all of her negates, because you are not going to be able to summon her with 30 to 100 attack. Usually it's 24 or even less sometimes, so this is why 38 is here. For the Link monsters, play 1 Link Kuriboh because of Larry, gives me access to Nightmare draws. 1 Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber has pretty much been completely overpower crept right now, because Link Rose got banned and it's not a good card anymore. You don't see it too often, but there are certain decks that Needle Fiber is still a really amazing card, and this is one of them, because it gives you access to Abunk, and when Abunk hits the field and you can get in the grave, then you will be able to do a lot more plays. This is why I think you need to play Needle Fiber in the deck. 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, because I like being able to discard more cards, and Phoenix is the most generic. You can play Unicorn if you want. I don't think you need to ever link climb into a Unicorn. Just 1 discard gives you more options, and being able to destroy back row is actually really important, because you can just duel monsters with sheer attack power, but back row sometimes can be problematic. 1 copy of Boral Sword. You can replace it with Access Code if you want, but I think sometimes Boral Sword gives you more OTK potential than Access Code, because Access Code on its own, yes, it's a really good card, but it cannot OTK. Boral Sword on its own with just 1 more monster cannot OTK, which is why I think is more important, especially in a deck like this when you're going second. Boral Sword is your main going second win condition, because otherwise the only thing you rely on is sheer attack points from your main deck monsters, but the main deck monsters don't give you that much utility. It's the extra deck that gives you utility and more OTK potential, which is why I think Boral Sword is a slightly better than Access Code in this deck. And 1 copy of Appaloosa, which is another monster you aim to summon turn 1. It's very easy to summon, especially with stuff like Sky Blaster, and then you will be able to protect with 38, so you can actually use all of her negates. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Fabled, it's a very old school deck. I know there are a lot of fans out there that really like this deck and other decks from Hidden Arsenal, and Konami with ice barriers, with stuff like Fabled, it seems that they're trying to give a support for all these old school archetypes, and the way the sets work now, that they don't rely on anime, pretty much any deck is possible to get support. So if you have a deck that you really like but hasn't been seen lately, or it hasn't seen any love, then just wait and you're going to get support 100% sometime in future, I guarantee it. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos, and we'll see you next time.